and today is my birthday. So I am wearing the Joe Cool sweatshirt that my kids got for me. And I'm making this video because I don't have to do chores today, so I might as well do this. Today we are going to go through the data of my reading years. We're going to look at 2025 in terms of numbers. So if I'm looking at my notes, or I've got graphs on my screen that I will put on your screen when I edit, that's what I'm looking at. Sorry if I'm not looking dead down the camera for you. I read 47 books this year. Now for me, that's a good number. Last year, I think I only read 42 or 43. So this is an improvement for me. I read 8 nonfiction books and 39 fiction books. So roughly 17% nonfiction and 83% fiction, which is about standard for me, I would say. I read 22 paperback books and 25 hardback books. I don't read ebooks anymore. My e-reader doesn't hold a charge, and I don't like ebooks enough to bother getting a new one, so it's all physical media for me. And I can't do audiobooks. I can do podcasts. I like podcasts. My favorite is There's No Such Thing as a Fish, but I can't absorb a story like verbally. I need to see the words. So I don't do audiobooks. Now, I have never tried an audio, like, nonfiction book. Maybe that would work for me. I don't know. But anyway, 22 paperback books, about 47% of my reading, and 25 hardback, about 53%. So it's pretty even there. I get most of my books from the library, and I think that's why a lot of them are hardback, because a lot of the library books are hardback. I would say, like, I got 25 books from the library this year. That's 53% of my reading. And I'd say that's the reason I read so many current books, because when I walk into my library, there's displays of new books, new releases, and then themed displays. And they're usually books from the last few years, things I've heard of. So I tend to pick those up as opposed to going into the stacks and finding older books. I want to get better finding, like, older books to read, but yeah, there's that. So 25 of the books came from the library. 4 books were gifts. 2 I bought with gift cards. So, you know, they're kind of like I bought, but also a gift. They fall in there somewhere. I bought 3 of them used. I pre-ordered 2. I just straight out bought 7 books this year. I borrowed 1 from someone as opposed to from a library, and 3 of the books I read I already owned. They were either in my stack or on my shelf. I should get better at reading the stuff I own instead of going to the library all the time. But I love patronizing my library, and every time I bring back, you know, my library books, I feel compelled to look at the displays, and then I end up with more books. It's a vicious cycle, but it's not a bad thing, right? But yeah, so 7 of the books I read were from 2025, which, I mean, it's like 15% of the books I read were from this year, which isn't terrible. But then 28 of the books I read were from 2020 to 2024. So that's 60%. So 75% of my reading was from the last 5 years of books. And again, I'd like to get better at reading stuff from older, like from further back. Then like 8 of them were from like 2010 to 2019. Only 1 was from 2000 to 2009. I read 2 from the 1980s and 1 from the 1960s. Now, that 1960s one was a children's book that I had read as a kid, and I had a copy, and I was trying to remember this book, so I went and found it and read it, and it counted toward my reading. It was the shortest book I read, 32 pages, but it counted. I read it. That was Cat Who Wore a Pot on Her Head, if I'm remembering the title correctly. And the longest book I read was the Iliad. I figure the two of those balance each other out somehow. Total number of pages I read, 14,971. Now my total is going to be different than what Goodreads tells me, because when I put in my spreadsheet the number of pages a book is, I take out any extraneous material, indices, acknowledgments, and I just count the pages that I'm actually reading of story. So Goodreads might, call a book 412 pages, but for me it's only like 397 because that's what I'm reading, or something like that, So when Goodreads comes out with your year in reading, I'm sure it will have a different number for me, pages read. I think mine's more accurate for pages I've actually read. And then the average length of book for me was 319 pages, which sounds about right. Like, I tend to go for books that are around 300 to 350-ish pages most of the time. Let's talk about age categories. 38 of the books I read were adult books. So, it's like 81%. 2 of them were new adult, what I would consider new adult, which is another 4%. So if you want to combine those, 85% of what I read was for adult readers. I read 6 YA books and that one children's book. I didn't read any middle grade this year. I don't know if I'm just not finding middle grade that interests me, or if, I don't know. If you could recommend any good middle grade books, let me know. But I guess I'm aging out of that. My kids are older. I'd still read an interesting middle grade book, but it's got to be something really compelling, I guess, for me to really want to pick it up. So, genres. I read 10 mystery books, and when I say mystery, I'm combining anything that was mystery, thriller, suspense, like under one umbrella. Anything that in my spreadsheet I put one of those indicators. So 10 total. I would say like 7 of those were straight out mystery, and then like another 3 were some kind of suspense or thriller book. 9 books had some kind of historical fiction angle. 7 of them had some kind of romantic plot that was key to the story. It may not have been a straight out romance, but the romance was enough of a part of the story for me to count it as having romance in it. 8 of them had some kind of fantasy element. This is probably mostly going to be that I read like 4 of the Heaven Official's Blessings books this year, and those are fantasy and historical fiction, and they have I don't know if I put them as romance. I doubt it, but I did definitely put them as LGBTQ, I think. And so I read 9 of those this year. That feels low to me, but maybe it's not. Maybe 9 is about average. Actually, I don't know. I'll have to go back and look and see how many LGBTQ books I read last year, and just see. Just see where that landed. If 9 is about normal for me or not. I'm not sure. 2 books were rereads. The Ghost by Robert Harris and Queen of the Damned, if you were here for that. 4 books were some form of manga, graphic novel, comic book type thing. So author gender. So I read 32 authors who are or identify as female, and 16 authors who are or identify as male. You'll notice, if you do the math, that that's actually 48 authors, but that's because one book I read had both a male and female author, and that's the Iliad, because I count Homer as the author, and then the translator was Emily Wilson, male and female. And then 15 of the authors were some form of minority, so that's 32% of the authors I read. My star ratings. It was actually a good year if you look at it from the fact that 7 books I read, I gave 5 stars to. Now, again, I think at least 3 of those were Heaven Official's Blessings. 1 or 2 of them were Nozaki-kun's. It's really easy And we'll talk about this in my best and worst too, but it's really easy for me to give 5 stars to things like that, probably because my standards are not quite as high for those kinds of books as they are for literature of any other sort. But that means 15% of the books I read, I gave 5 stars. That's a lot for me, honestly. Now, that is to say, I had more, though, 2 to 2.9 star reads. I had like 11 of those. Yeah, my least favorite books of the year is going to be jam-packed too, right? So 23% of the books I read were like in the 2-star range. And then I did have 4 books fall between 1 and 1.9. Oh no, yeah, I had some stinkers this year that I didn't vibe with. Now, again, Goodreads is probably going to give me some other number because in my spreadsheet I'm a little more, I'll be like, oh, that was a 1.3, that was a, and Goodreads only allows whole stars, right? So my average, which I think comes out to like 3.6, which is not bad. I mean, it's average. It's a little above average, let's say, because if there's a 5-star rating, 2.5 is dead middle, right? Even though we usually think of anything in the 2 or lower as bad and 3 to be average. So, yeah, I mean, my average rating was above average. Although, again, I would say for me, a 3-star is an average book. Anything below 3 stars is a bad book. For some reason, it doesn't work for me. I had, 9 books in like the 4.5 to 4.9 range, which is, again, pretty good. If you take anything from 4.5 and up, that's 34% of my reading is 4.5 or better. That's a pretty good amount, right? And anything below 2, it's more like 32%. Overall, a good year, I'd say. I'm going into the new year. I'm reading these books will count towards the new year because I don't think I'll finish them before the end of the year because they're long. I'm reading I Have Some Questions for You by Rebecca Makkai. Destroy This House by Amanda, I don't know how to say her last name. Uli? I don't know. Uhle. So I'm reading those right now. And those will be the first couple books of next year by the time I'm done. But yeah, that's the data for this year. I will get into best and worst books in the next couple videos. Best is never as entertaining, I don't think, obviously. I don't like to be negative, but it's far more entertaining to rant, and it's far more entertaining to watch a rant than it is to watch somebody go, yeah, I liked this book. It's just human nature. I don't know. I feel like it's easier for people to articulate things they really dislike than it is for them to explain why they like a thing. Say, well, it was well written, a good story, like the characters. But you can definitely delineate things you dislike in a book, and that tends to give you more meat to talk about. So that's coming. And in the meantime, these are the numbers. Not bad. I am satisfied with my reading year. I think it was fine. I had, like I said, some really, really great reads in there, and then I had some that I am sorry. It's people say, well, why don't you just? But there are books that have a promise to them, and you're kind of hoping that somewhere in there they will fulfill the promise they made to you. Or they start out really great, and then somewhere in there they go way off the rails. Yeah, so we'll talk about those soon. In the meantime, I'm going to go out. I'm going to have wonderful food for my birthday. And until next time, take care.